sector. If you could please stand up. So thank you for coming. The real estate community. Thank you very much. And then also the service industry. If we could have anyone, but if you fall under two categories, feel free to send me in. Excellent, thank you very much. And did I leave anyone out? If you would like to stay. Thank you. So I-77, it's the backbone of our local economy. And what we are looking at is the future. This is taken directly off of the DOT's webpage. This is their publicly available information. It happens to be missing some direct access exits, but that's the latest thing I could find. So anyway, that's basically the picture. And these express lanes actually do continue on down to South Charlotte, but the majority of the congestion is in this area, and this is really where we're going to focus our discussion. You know, the I-77 corridor is heavily congested. This is a picture that was actually taken on a Saturday, right off of exit 33 and 31. And you can see the congestion on the side roads. Like this is another Waze picture. It's self-explanatory. But the quote that we have at the bottom is actually from I-77 Mobility Partners. And it says, I-77 suffers from severe traffic congestion, or that increased lane capacity is needed to improve mobility in the project area. So, you know, the company that's got the contract recognizes that this area is severely congested. The current hot lane solution, it's privately operated. Their toll lanes, the total length is about 27.5 miles. The total cost is $655 million, although that doesn't include the bonus money, which is directly aids the toll lanes, but we'll just keep it with the DOT's numbers and say $655 million. And then total taxpayer input's around $190 million. So, how do these things work? Based on the DOT's estimates, immediately when they're put in, we expect about a 6% increase in extra capacity. 6% seems kind of low, but that's their number, and if you look at other hot lanes around the country, that's a pretty accurate number. The 20% is regarded as a maximum capacity that it would ever allow. Obviously, hot lanes are taken as a last resort, and people just don't use them unless they have to. This contract is built and operated under an exclusive 50-year contract. We're bound by the terms of it for 50 years. Vehicles with 3 or more occupants can use a lane for free, and there's a little asterisk. There are restrictions. You can read about those. Electronic tolling, there's no toll booths. There's a guaranteed minimum speed in the contract. There's no limit on the toll, so the private company has the ability to charge whatever they would like, which is whatever the market will bear. And that's congestion pricing, so that means that it changes. The price changes in each segment every 5 minutes. So as more people get onto the toll lane, the slower it gets. The only way they have to keep people from getting on the toll lane and avoid the congestion is to raise the price. There's no gate that comes down and says you can't just go on the toll lane. It's the price and the choice that you make of which lane that you take. And more congestion in the free lanes equals a higher price to use the toll lanes. And I'd like to show you the express lane's purpose. So this is right on the contract. The summary of the project is, or the purpose of the proposed action is to provide immediate travel time reliability along I-77 from uptown Charlotte to the Lake Norman area. Because the project is designed to address an immediate need, the opening and design years are both proposed for 2017. So their purpose is to increase throughput from the Lake Norman area to downtown. Lake Norman to downtown. And then also I'd like to add that that being their purpose, they really don't have intercity commerce in mind, and nor do they provide a transportation solution for semi-trucks, because anything with more than 2 axles is not allowed on the toll lanes. So they're technically not given a choice. To be fair, they do get the extra 6 to 20% capacity, but that only happens when the existing lanes are congested. So can the express lanes help me? They do not directly address intercity commerce. Traffic on the express lanes must remerge through congested traffic to reach intermediate exits. So exits 35, 30, 28, 25, and 23, if you're trying to get to a business at those exits, you have to get through the stop traffic or the slow congested traffic that you chose to avoid by getting on the toll lane. Navigate through that. And your friends are going to be in that lane, probably not being very nice to let you over. Also, there's no direct access on area hospitals. So exit 33 and 25 are curiously bypassed. So if you've got an emergency, you're probably better off going downtown, because that's the whole purpose of this thing. There are new toll-only interchanges at Hambright, Westmoreland, and there's another one. I ran out of time. If someone else could help me, let me know where that is. Maybe we'll cover that later. So they do add 6 to 20% more gross throughput, but that's only when the general purpose lanes are congested. So you're basically waiting until the general purpose lanes are stopped before you get anybody going down the toll lanes. And again, vehicles with 3 or more axles are not allowed on the toll lanes, so they do not have a choice to speed up their travel time anywhere. Express lanes, they're not an efficient use of roadway. A result of increasing tolls with the objective of maximizing revenue is that the hot lanes would operate under a condition where their utilization would be well below capacity. So that just means that we're guaranteeing a minimum speed, which doesn't let us fully utilize the roadway. Thus, by definition, they're not providing the maximum congestion relief in the corridor for a given amount of roadway. You technically would be better off, throughput-wise, at least not in complete congestion situations, having the general purpose lanes. And this is taken directly from a technical memo from the DOT, or from Stantec. It's one of the engineering companies. So even if free, the express lanes are a transportation issue. The barricades and limited access nature of the hot lanes do not offer the flexibility of a traditional lane. Navigating simple single-lane wrecks is not improved and likely further impeded with less get-around area. There are barricades that get put up, so it just makes things more difficult. The express lanes do consume all of our existing cheap right-of-way. And then 115 and 21, by the nature of the contract, are just going to continue to worsen regarding congestion. Town centers of Mooresville, Huntersville, Davidson, and Cornelius will see little relief and will worsen over time. And again, semi-trucks are not given a choice for congestion relief. So this leads me into my executive summary of the economic impact of the express lanes on I-77. I've tried to convey what the hot lanes represent as far as a transportation perspective and the 6 to 20% extra capacity that they mean to us, and that'll lead me into this. Again, here's my picture of exit 33 and the traffic on Saturday. So the express lanes, they represent a competitive disadvantage. You are given a choice. If the express lanes fit your transportation needs, you're able to incur a direct financial loss and pay the toll. Your choice B is suffer through the congestion, which is equal to decreased productivity. The majority of the time, this option is taken by businesses and commuters. Everybody can't take the tolling. And then, C, if the express lane does fit your needs, you can carpool with 3+ and then use the lanes for free. But again, there's a transponder fee and other restrictions that apply. You can look that up. These are the toll rates that were in the DOT's documentation. You can see this shows the peak price for 2015, and their estimates were $11.75 one way, $9.05 the other. It's over $20 round trip. And that's, these are their estimate numbers. Nobody knows exactly how much they're going to cost, but this is what they were thinking. So, and the toll rates are lower at other times of the day, but this could be you. So 2035, 20 years from now. Remember, this is a 50-year contract, so we're not even halfway yet. 2035, the toll rates have doubled, and you're looking at a $40 expense, and these are their numbers. So express lanes, they basically mean money off your bottom line. Your choice A is pay the toll. By year 5, their estimates were $34 million in annual gross toll receipts. So that's just what the toll costs, plain and simple. If you look at, if you calculate what all the tolls are over time, we end up with an estimate of $12 billion in 50 years. So that's money that's mainly taken out of the economy here. You can look at the traffic up at Troutman and Statesville that comes south, and we all know that the majority of the traffic that's on the interstate is generated here. It's not out of town. So, express lanes, continuing the competitive disadvantage talk. Our choice B is to endure the congestion. Congestion just equals a productivity loss. It's a steadily worsening situation for 80 to 94% of users. That's just because they're the poor souls that aren't able to go on the tolls. And productivity loss estimates are in the $10 billion to $20 billion range based over the entire time of the project. So we're looking at a financial loss in time that's fairly equal to the financial loss in money. That estimate is taken from one of our experts up here. I'm not a transportation expert, but I feel like I know a little bit about business. And then also, this chart, it shows 2015, what your morning and afternoon commute times are, and then what the projected times are in 2035, which are an extra hour if you choose to go the general purpose lanes, which, again, not everybody needs to take an express lane to Charlotte. That's not what we're trying to do. So, choice C, carpool. Well, we could hire more people to do the same job or alter their commuting requirements. Or we could potentially hire part-time ride-alongs. Maybe it's cheaper to pay placeholders than to pay the toll. As businesses, we got to think creatively, and that could be a reality. Minimum wage, maybe less than the toll. So, we've got a minimal improvement of general purpose lanes. The analysis included in the toll project indicates modest improvements to average travel speed, all vehicles and person trips processed with minimal impact to the travel speed and the general purpose lanes. So this is saying that once the express lanes are in, we don't expect any relief in congestion. And this is taken directly from MUMPO and Bill Cox, the people that voted for this project, or recommended the project, and things were different then. But if you're a business that doesn't have the choice to use the express lanes, this project is not going to provide you with any relief. Express lanes, it's not a choice for trucking. So businesses that rely on trucking do not get immediate relief. So we've had MUMPO telling us that the existing general purpose lanes will not be any faster than they are today once they get this finished in 2017. Due to contractual limitations, the congestion is only going to worsen on I-77, 115, and 21. So, we're faced with a situation where transportation for trucking is at a severe disadvantage. So recruiting new businesses is going to be a real challenge. Trucking transportation capacity is guaranteed to decline with this system. So existing businesses that require truck transport, it's not far-fetched to say that they'll gradually move away. If you have a competitive disadvantage in an area, and a neighboring area's got no impediments like that, we're a bunch of business people, it's a no-brainer. So, where would you locate your business or manufacturing facility? So, the Lake Norman region with, a permanent transportation problem? Or would you go to Gastonia where it's been widened, or Concord where we've got the new lanes right by the Speedway, or Rock Hill where they've got really low gas tax and a nice lake? This is just some stuff to think about. So next we come to the trickle-down effects. So by nature of statistics, we know that most employees are going to suffer a lower quality of life through and during congestion. All employees are going to suffer through higher living expenses, whether you're paying the tolls or paying a higher price for goods and services that come in off of trucking infrastructure. But on a side note, I'd like to just stick in a note about the light rail. By definition, light rail doesn't carry any cargo. So again, light rail is not your savior for trying to move goods and services back and forth to Charlotte. And wait a minute, we were trying to do business in between the cities here. We don't really want to go to Charlotte anyway. So with higher expenses, we've got less expendable cash. That trickles down to restaurants, anything you could possibly think of, recreation on the lake. I know we've got Lake Norman Power Sports here, and they sell some real cool toys. I have a couple. I'm going to have less money to use those things. So again, other areas become more attractive as there's no financial or time burden to get to work. And the peak tolls are when you need to get to work. It's strictly the heaviest burden comes on the working class. So, the other side effect is that all local businesses and real estate suffer. So, there's a financial and time productivity impact. And, those people need a place to live. And, the fact of the matter is that real estate prices, just like anything else, if you're given a choice, are you going to buy a house that costs you $20 every time you want to go to the grocery store or go somewhere else, when you can pick another one where you don't have that? Or, you don't have to pay the money, but by the time you get home, all the ice cream's melted. So my conclusions on my economic analysis are it's going to siphon billions from the local economy. I don't think I really need to be very accurate on the estimate there, but we do have some experts. $12 billion is reasonable. the rest of us, it ensures an increasing productivity burden on 80 to 94% of users. So, when you're a business and you got employees, you're not going to be able to hire that 6% that's not going to be burdened by time. It's just statistically, you're not going to be able to fall in that category. You will be impacted. And I'd like to, a hypothetical business, like say your only product is selling apps on the App Store. You think, well, these wouldn't affect me. Well, you've got less time to write your programs. Your productivity's dropping. So even if it costs you nothing to deliver your product to the customer, effectively, there's a 33% fee with Apple, but you will be impacted by the express lanes. And again, this has minimal impact on truck transport as far as increasing throughput immediately, and then it ensures a negative trend for the next 50 years. So, that's just trying to present the facts to you that we have. Again, this becomes a deterrent to future business development. If it's difficult to get to businesses and cost you more money, that's a competitive disadvantage. And then finally, this could cause businesses with trucking needs to relocate. Not saying everybody's going to leave the area, but you're at a competitive disadvantage. And my line of work, if you're not first, you're last. So it's something to think about. So choices. We got a picture of the very first spacewalk. That was in 1965. And it's Life magazine. I think that kind of sets up a nice example of what 50 years could mean. So when we were first getting to space, we aren't even on the moon yet. That's what 50 years ago was. 40 years ago, they built the interstate. And then Lake Norman came after that. So the interstate hasn't even been around as long as this contract is going to take effect. And then we do have choices. We could go another direction. At the CRTPO meeting a week ago, the DOT in their slide said that, yeah, we could cancel the contract, but it's going to cost us $20 million and potentially have $100 million in damages or penalties. So there's a cost to change direction. And at the meeting, the general consensus was, man, $20 million, I don't know how we could ever justify that to the taxpayer. So that's what they were saying. And if you've got a chance, I'd really recommend playing that video back on the internet. It's on YouTube. So next, this is your turn to speak. This is why we're all here. This is your chance to tell me that I'm completely wrong. I'm not wanting to get up here and give an economic analysis that isn't rosy. This is my home. I'm from Mooresville. I'm a minority. My parents still live in the same place off exit 33. And, the big city moved to me. I didn't choose to move to the big city. So, Jim Puckett's here. I know we're waiting on Jeff Tart. He's making laws. Stuck in traffic, that's right. What am I thinking? And we also have David Hartgen here. He's a former professor, a retired professor from UNC Charlotte. He owns he's a transportation engineering professor. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to roads. I'm just an engineer that works on race cars. Anyway, he has his own transportation consulting firm that actually specializes in transportation planning and policy, economic development, and strategic visioning. So I actually sent him my presentation beforehand and asked him to take a look at it, and he sent me back an email that said that I got an A. So thanks. Okay. Well, anyway, this is going to be your chance to talk. We've got 2 microphones. We want to get input from the business community about, what are you thinking? Did I say something that you don't agree with? Because I am a business owner. I feel like I understand dollars and cents, but I'm in a room full of CEOs, CFOs, and people that do this for a living. So we'll open it up. I'm going to hand it to Jim Puckett, and we'll take some questions from the audience and start a discussion.
First, I want to thank Micheal Waltrip and Mr. Johns and Mac. They've done a masterful job. But before I speak, I probably want to say, if Dr. Harkin, if there's anything you would like to add to the presentation, anything that we might have missed, any of the details. One of the things I think that we didn't talk about extremely clearly was the limited access and how the tolls work, how you get on and off of the interstates, and what that will do to transportation. We have heard about the cost of tolls, we've heard about congestion, we've heard about any number of things. The people that have not been engaged in this process are the people in this room today that are the business people who have, by and large, I think, have been busy running their businesses and not clearly understanding the impact it will have on their business, but even more so on the potential economic development of North Mecklenburg and Iredell County. So, Dr. Harkin, is there anything you want to add to what we've heard as kind of the facts? I'd love to hear them.
Well, let me just add one or two more quick points. If any of you have been to Raleigh and have taken the opportunity to drive on the Triangle Expressway, you know basically how the toll situation works. Basically, there are two mechanisms that are used to extract money from your pocket. One is through a video recording of your license, and then several weeks later you get a nice letter in the mail that says send X dollars to the authority. The other way that it works is that if you purchase a transponder, basically a little gizmo that you put on your windshield, that transponder also trips a recorder in the gantry that extends over the road, and the transponder then also sends you a similar bill. There's no cash, there's no toll booth, it's not like the Jersey Pipe 20 years ago, and so it's pretty smooth from an operational perspective. The real cost, of course, particularly if you're using it on a regular basis, you don't see that until the credit card bill, if you will, arrives in the mail at the end of the month. The Triangle Expressway is actually an interesting example. We don't have any toll roads in North Carolina except that road. It's been open about 4 years. If you've been on it, you know that it's basically a 6-lane highway. It was designed for traffic volumes of about 150,000 cars a day. That's about the maximum practical limit of a 6-lane interstate. The traffic volumes on that road are under 10,000 cars a day. And the highest volume is up close to I-40 there as you go to the airport, which carries about 20,000. So if you've been on the road, you know what I'm going to say in the next sentence. It's basically empty. And the reason it's empty is that it provides access points between two locations, which really don't have a lot of reason to travel between them. But that isn't the case here. This case is much more robust, if you will, from a travel perspective. This region and this corridor is, as you know, is just intensely dependent upon Interstate 77. It's our lifeline. It's, I think, fair to say that it wouldn't be nearly the development we have or the quality we have here were not for both the lake and the interstate. And there are other factors that play into this: the quality of the lifestyle, the schools, the police, all of that helps. But without that connectivity, we'd be in this corridor essentially just another location that's poorly connected. So it's not surprising that this area has grown. When I first moved to Charlotte some years ago, it was basically a 20-minute trip from downtown to the lake. Now it's roughly 40 minutes, according to this slide. And looking ahead, even with this proposal, it's going to be 70 minutes if you choose not to use the express lane. And that assumes that the growth in the region is going to be as is predicted. One of the central errors in this analysis, I think, is that the growth is presumed not to depend upon the interstate. Essentially, they're projecting the same growth, whether or not this toll lane is built or not. I think that's a fundamental mistake. If the toll lane is built as described, the growth will probably slow substantially. And so it'll be a real economic impact, not just on the folks that are here now, which we've had the description of what the impacts are, but also on the potential going forward. It's a very substantial impact, and I think a much larger area than was shown on the little map. Maybe just go back to the map for a second. The one that showed the Rock Hill, Concord. Yeah, there you go. The impression has been given here that this is a project that affects I-77 and nobody else in town really it needs to worry. But, my analysis of what they've done here suggests that the impact area is considerably wider than just 77 and 115 and 21. It probably extends on the west all the way over to Route 16, which has recently been widened. And if you know about the growth of the area, you know that Lincoln County has exploded recently with regard to development. And that's because Route 16 has been improved. And on the east, it extends probably over to about Prosperity Church area and possibly over to Eastland Road. And certainly is going to be affected by the opening next week of the rest of 485. So the impact area of this is not just 20,000 people who live at the lake and along the interstate. I would say it's probably closer to 150 or 200,000 folks who live within 4, 5, or 6 miles of 77 on either side. Your local streets are going to be crammed full. Their own forecasts show that travel times on the road itself will double, but they don't show the real surprise, and that is that the congestion on the feeder roads and the parallel roads is going to go way up because folks are going to try to avoid the toll and avoid the congestion on the remaining 2 general purpose lanes. And those who want to use those are going to get caught in the scramble to try to get to the access lanes. So I think it's a recipe for disaster, frankly. I've said it's one of the most foolish decisions that I've seen in this community in 25 years. There are a couple of others that are right up there, but this has got to be one of the most foolish that I've seen in my 45 years of transportation professor.
Could you comment on the recently divulged clause in this contract that says that if improvements are made outside of this toll corridor, that we actually owe penalties to the toll company for making these other improvements?
Yes, there are 2 parts to the clause. One of the parts essentially says that. Oh, sorry. The gentleman asked about the compensation clauses that require the state to pay back the company if other roads in the corridor are improved. And yes, that's right. The contract has 2 relevant parts there. One is essentially a requirement that if the state decides to widen parallel roads, it's not entirely clear just how far that definition extends or what roads are included. But then, if the state decides to do that, it has to pay back to the toll operator essentially an amount intended to recompensate them for the lost revenue that they would have gained. The second part is perhaps even more insidious, and that says that if the revenue falls below the projections, and I think frankly there's a very substantial probability that it will, then the state is required to pay back to the contractor a bonus payment, referred to as an availability payment, that basically compensates the contractor for lost revenue. So there are 2 sweet deals, if you will, in the fine print that basically ensure that the risk being undertaken by the contractor is lower, and in both cases, the state would have to pony up those amounts.
Thank you. I will speak also to the question you had about it speaks to the widening of, say, 115 and 21. You cannot make them limited access, which essentially makes them a highway without compensation. But for me, the reason that this pivoted was when they took away the ability to widen I-77 over the lake. That's when it became a serious economic development constraint. How many people were here last Thursday when the truck jackknifed on I-77? Traffic backed up 20 miles from here to Trout. I was actually in another meeting that we had people that were, it took an hour and 20 minutes to get from Troutman to Huntersville. The dilemma with this from a transportation point of view is that since you cannot expand over into the toll lanes, if you have a wreck, if you have that type of backup, all your tractor trailer traffic and anyone who cannot or does not want to use the choice of the toll road backs up. That's the problem that Iredell has with this, is they are limited in access to Mecklenburg County and Charlotte. Because if you then build another lane across I-77 to gain some access and some capacity for transportation, not just cars, but for actual movement of product, we have to pay for that. That bottleneck, just by default, remains a negative against companies and manufacturers who start to come here. The other piece that never gets talked about, and I don't think was ever anticipated back when this was first the lesser of a number of evils 5 years ago, was we don't just have increasing truck traffic. I receive white papers on a regular basis from Dr. John Sylvia. He's the chief economist for Wells Fargo. I got one 3 weeks ago that was enlightening. It talked about the Fed's problem with funding interstates over the next few years. And it has to do with gas tax and usage and a whole lot of things that I wasn't that interested in because it's the Fed's problem. But what he talked about was the increase and the growing increase of interstates for ground transportation. With the decrease of hard retail, which I spent 18 years in the retail business before I got into the manufacturing side. Back in the days of Eastland Mall, if we can remember where that was, and South Park Mall, and those of us who live in this area remember that was the closest mall, and the only way you got there was on I-77. Now with Amazon and eBay and e-commerce, it's brought to us. And it's brought to us by trucks. So that capacity, that needed additional capacity on interstates, is growing across the nation as much as it is in Charlotte. Charlotte, however, and Mecklenburg County has invested millions of dollars in an intermodal facility. We actually, and it's a smart thing to do, build out the airport. We are seeking to become a transportation hub. Back when I was a kid, before banking was big in Mecklenburg County, we were very proud that we were the largest trucking company in the world. Trucks came out of Charlotte. If I'm not mistaken, we were the second largest trucking center in America. That went away. It's coming back. It's coming back in a bigger and harder and heavier way. We have an interstate system that connects I-85 and I-40 to east-west, north-south systems, linked to an intermodal, but we're going to be constrained going across the lake or pay a penalty. That is when the folks at Micheal Waltrip and other people started to say, wait a minute, this is not a toll issue. This is an infrastructure issue. It's not just about the fact that we paid for it for 25 years and now we're not going to get what we were promised. It's not a solution. So that's part of what brought us here today. So that bottleneck and that compensation is a major problem, not just for congestion, but for how we develop economically along this corridor. So I'd like to welcome Senator Jeff Tart. Jeff called me 2.5 hours ago. He was leaving Raleigh, and he said it'd take him a while to get here, and it did, because he comes 40 to 77. Questions to anybody here, and we do have, by the way, other things to talk about, but we want to make sure we get everyone comfortable with the process, what's out there, and from it. And I'd like to limit the questions to business related if we can, not the amount of tolls, etc. So, any particular questions? Oh, yes. In the green.
Two. First, on I-77.
Tell you what, let's get you a microphone. while we're waiting, again, these people have been so extraordinarily gracious. I hope you come back here and visit them regularly and buy all the products that are on the side of their car.
Thank you very much, and thank you for holding this summit. It's incredibly important to the business people here, and I think a lot have felt in the dark about what this whole thing is, so thank you for shedding some light. The first question I have is on 77, if I'm understanding the way that this will actually be constructed, if it ever is that the lanes, the 4 lanes that we have going up to 23, will that then reduce to 2 general purpose lanes and 2 toll lanes, so we'll actually lose 2 lanes? Is that the way it's going to go, or are they building additional lanes?
One of those additional lanes is already there. That's the HOV lane, which if you've driven 77, you notice a lot of empty pavement next to you. That's what we refer to as the HOV lane, high occupancy vehicle. That lane will be converted to one of the 2 additional toll lanes. So the 4 lanes you see up to 23 will remain. There'll be an additional lane built parallel to the present HOV lane, and then 2 of them will be converted to HOT, high occupancy and toll lanes. The remaining 4 lanes, that is the 4 lanes that are there now, are referred to as the general purpose lanes. That then squeezes to 3 as you go up further north, and then to 2. So there's not going to be any widening of the general purpose lanes during this time period.
Okay, and the other question is, I've heard a lot of talk about the actual contract itself, that it is quite lopsided, that there are no penalties for the contractor if they don't get things done by a certain time, et cetera, et cetera. It seems very heavily weighted that our state is going to be penalized, which means us, the taxpayer, and not the contractor. Everything seems to be going towards they get a free cash flow whether they perform or not. Could you explain that?
The person who probably could is in the back, and I don't know if they want to come down and speak to it. The contract is clearly written, in my opinion, to ensure the financial viability of the tolling company. There's no doubt whatsoever. As a matter of fact, when you read the prospectus for the bonds, it basically says that this project will, you will set tolls to ensure traffic, reasonable traffic levels, speeds, and guarantee revenue for repayment of bonds. So everything comes back to the guarantee of being able to pay the debt. I can tell you that the company did have 2 or 3 delays from their hard close with no penalty, and the state just essentially allowed them to continue to try and find financing. So I can't speak to the details of that contract. If someone knows the answer to that particular question and wants to raise their hand, I'll recognize you. Mr. Doss, if you'd like to come down, you might be able to help us with that. While he's coming down, is there another question?
Here you go, sir. Oh, thank you.
Ah, perfect. You can do it from up there. This is Kurt Noss. Kurt Noss was the citizen who got involved and interested in this about 3 years ago, before there was a widened I-77 and before there was any of us. He just, he was interested in it, looked at it, and has been at the forefront of it, and probably knows as much about it as any other person not in NCDOT. Thank you, Kurt.
And somehow I knew I'd be ending up behind the microphone for that. I'd also like to thank Micheal Waltrip Racing for holding this as well. And Mac, that was a great presentation from one who has given a number of them. So yes, there are penalties for Centra. It is not completely lopsided. For instance, if they don't clear traffic within a certain period of time, they start to pay a penalty, and those penalties are pretty severe, as much as $10,000 to $20,000 for every 15-minute increment. But as you know, all it takes is one accident. You could have it, a bad accident, you could have it cleared in half an hour, traffic backs up for like the next 4 hours. What we find is that the peak toll rates occur, for instance, on the Capitol Beltway when there's bad weather and when there's an accident. There are also they were required to post what's called a financial close security bond, which if they missed the financial close, they were supposed to forfeit that bond. It was $15 million to the state. The state decided to go ahead and extend that without penalty, and further bear the cost of refinancing that bond for as long as it took, basically for the 2 extensions. So there are a number of other penalties in the contract for Centra. After the 2 extensions and the 4 amendments that we've had with the contract, I don't think that's so much the issue. I think the issue is the contract is what they want it to be. It changes, and so what you'll see happening is if there's something that they don't want to do, they'll go ahead and change it to something that they do. So it's kind of a living, breathing document as opposed to the binding agreement it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Is it on? Correct me if I'm wrong. The reason, as I understand it, from talking to a bond attorney, the reason Centra has not been able to get funding is because of their past problems with financial issues, such as being banned from the state of Texas, costing Indiana $100 million. Nobody is going to loan somebody like that money, ask any banker. And the only reason they're able to even talk about a financial close now is because the state of North Carolina guarantees that the taxpayers will pay 70% of the contract?
$75 million.
$75 million. That's all?
Up to $75 million.
The state of North Carolina will pay part of the loss, or part of the contract, and last week, Anthony Fox guaranteed that the federal government would make up anything else. So now that Centra, or that contract and that funding is guaranteed by your tax dollars anyway, Centra can get funding, which brings my question being, what do we need Centra for anyway if we're going to be responsible for the whole thing all the way through?
Okay. Other questions? Wave your hand. My microphone is headed to one up there. 1 second. You're next.
Hi, I'm Danae Caulfield. I'm a realtor broker in the area and definitely concerned about the impact it's going to have on our businesses. I was also a commissioner in the town of Huntersville and remember the discussion coming about when I was on back in 2010, and we weren't told a lot of the things obviously that we now know. But one of my first concerns was when this information started coming out was we have a nuclear power plant right down Highway 73, and we're not discussing that very much. And when I started looking into it and looking at the fact that the federal government has to redo those emergency evacuation routes every so often, I don't know if it's been done. And so I'm kind of lopping this off on Senator Tartt and Representative Bradford and who else is here. Have we really looked into that to see, has our emergency evacuation routes been updated? Because I know right now the situation, the way it is, we couldn't move very fast if something happened. And the second part of that is when they put in these toll roads, there's going to be a concrete barrier and you're not going to be able to get on and off at will. And so if there was a disaster, they say, well, we're going to not charge tolls. Well, that's nice, but if you can't get on and off, you really don't care if you're paying money. So that's one of my really big concerns amidst all the other concerns is that. And so I'm kind of throwing that out to you guys, and you don't have to necessarily answer it today, but I would ask as representatives of our area if you would take a serious look at that. The other one is free, and it's just a suggestion that I had. I drive down 77 and I see what he had mentioned earlier is the HOV lane completely empty. Today I drove it and there was nobody in it for miles. And so my quick suggestion is, why don't we go back to the federal government and open that up into a general purpose lane? It'd be a quick fix now, but the bottlenecking starts right at exit 1918. That would help alleviate some of that congestion. And then if we do get out of this contract, that would help us more long term. So thank you.
Thank you. I will tell you that there are not concrete barriers, correct? I believe they are the little pylons. So you will not be able to get on and off easy enough, but you have to go across the pylon, so that's it. Did you want to speak to some other?
In an earlier life, I looked at evacuation plans for nuclear facilities. You're right, they do have to be updated regularly, and I'm not familiar with the plan for McGuire. I had no opportunity to look at it or reason to look at it, but a infrastructure event such as this would certainly require a revision of that plan or a review of it, and particularly since most of the traffic issues related to McGuire are on the east side of McGuire, that is, they're up and down the corridor, and that's the prevailing wind direction also. So basically these plans look at what would happen if there were an event, where would the winds take the output, shall we say, and who would be affected, and then how do we clear that area. It's basically a cone-shaped area moving east from the facility. So it drifts essentially over the interstate and over the towns and over commuters who happen to be on the interstate at the time. So yes, it's an important issue. In the documents I looked at, I didn't see anything that referenced McGuire, but it was certainly a follow-up issue that need to be looked at. On the second part of your question, this goes back to federal legislation which was written in the 1990s. It basically says that a community cannot widen an interstate unless it's part of a congestion management plan. Well, the only exceptions to that are HOV lanes at that time. We didn't even use the word HOT then. And so the HOV lane was constructed because it was essentially the only action that the state could do in that corridor that would not require a revision of the congestion management plan for the region. And those rules are very strict, and they basically don't allow you to add excess free capacity unless you can show that it will reduce congestion. But times change. New rules get written all the time. New presidents come in, new secretaries come in, new congresses come in, and rules do occasionally get changed. We're now in a discussion about the new rules for the next go around. We're not going to have a bill probably in Washington until, I would guess, September. And then after that, those rules might be revised. So right now, there's no legal way to open that lane to general purpose, even though it's an obvious action. And we've all driven the road, we know it's a waste of money. So what can we do about it? Nothing right at the moment.
Next question. We're going to take one or two more, and then we're going to go to phase 2 in the end.
So again, thanks to Michael Waltrip Racing for this. My name is Steve Doolittle. I own 3 Trek bicycle stores, one at each of the exits, equidistant on that map. That map is our retail footprint in the area. I just have one question, really. We've seen the widening of early on I-85 South, I-85 recently through Concord. We've seen 485 been constructed. What is so unique? Why couldn't the same, and this is history maybe, but what was so unique about I-77 that the same combination of state and federal funds just couldn't make that happen? I left out also, we saw the inner loop and the outer loop in Raleigh be built in the same way. So what really was so unique that led to this sort of wild conclusion here?
Another expert.
Well, as you may recall, about 3 years ago, in the previous administration, there was a considerable discussion about how we fund roads in North Carolina. And both previous governor and the current governor said that if elected, they would revise that process. Basically, in the old system, we had a process that was largely political. Money was passed out to regions of the state, and then the locals decided on projects based on the totals. The projects were not evaluated head-to-head, and they were not even reviewed for worthiness. As strange as that may sound, we didn't review projects for their impact on congestion or safety or anything else. They were simply local choices. So that process was changed. Well, I should say this widening of 77 was included in that older list. That process was changed in 2013 when the legislature passed a new method of evaluating projects based on their merit. And the new legislation said that all projects which were not committed before July 1st of this year, 2015, would fall under that new method. And that would have included this project, except this project had already been committed. So about 25 or 30 projects around the state that were essentially partially funded and had been moved on to the highway program, those projects, including this one, were exempted from that new rule. And so they were never scored as to worthiness. Now we know that they have been scored informally. And we know, looking at those informal scorings, that this project, if it were in the new list, it would score quite well, probably in the middle of the pack, possibly in the upper part of the pack. And so, to get to your question, it probably would be funded. If we were just thinking it up now and ticking it on the highway program now, it probably would be, I would guess, in the top 15 or 20% of the projects in the state. It probably would get funded. Yes.
Contract was not signed until last Tuesday. So up until then, could we have been part of what you're talking about? And is that why the contract was rushed to be signed? So it's supposed to be signed to the 27th.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't remember exactly what the legislation said. I don't intend to be a lawyer. Probably that's one of the reasons that there's been so much pressure to move before July 1st.
Actually, that was part of my question. To segue to your point that we may get additional funding. Obviously, this project has been talked about for several years, and our community has been divided on it. But regardless of which side you stood on, in the last couple of weeks after the new contract details developed, everyone, or majority of people, were concerned and certainly sought for review. All of our towns agreed, county commission, all placed votes. In the meantime, we did see a speed up of that contract signing. My question was, do we have a clear explanation as to why that contract was sped up? To her point, I really would like to know that.
I was at the CRTPO meeting the day after the contract was signed. I spoke on everyone here's behalf, pleading the business case. There were only 10 people that spoke, but I was very glad to be there, and that's really what inspired me to create this meeting today. I would like to, as a business person, contracts are made to be broken. I think we need to look at this economic impact of this situation that we're in, look at the big picture, and as business people need to think about a way forward. The contract has been signed, it's coming our way, we're going to have to deal with it. So today I would like to deal with what those consequences are. Not so much worry about what, the crazy, I know that Centra has a horrible reputation. That's not really the purpose of why I wanted to bring everybody here today. It's to talk about where we need to go, how we need to move forward, and can we agree on the way to move forward. So I hope I've inspired people to get here. I'd like to hear some people on what do they think as far as a way forward from this economic challenge that we've got in front of us.
It says we're going to lose $20 to $100 million if we try to break this contract. My question is, we're going to have to add lanes from 28 to 36 at some point. We're going to get penalized for that. So why not take that? We're going to have to pay them some money. So why not just, let's find a way to break the contract right now, lean on our representatives, and try to see what we can do to get out of the contract. I'm hopeful that the lawsuit ends it, but as business community, we just got to get away from this.
Thank you. As I understand it, MUMPO years ago voted that all future expansions of interstates would be toll roads. So any new road would be a toll road. Cannot we, as part of the plan here, get the successor to MUMPO to vote not to have any future interstates be toll roads and at least begin to salvage some of the future?
I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but I do think that toll roads have their place sometimes. You know, unfortunately, the way this contract is written, the fact that it's a toll road isn't even the root of the problem. It's the fact that businesses are limited in their commerce between these towns. It's a permanent competitive disadvantage for trucking. Permanent. I mean, I'll be retired by the time it's over. My 1-year-old will be 51. Give me a break. So, you know, really, we'll go to the next question.
Actually, the lead is not MUMPO, it's the state. Federal law says specifically that if a project is on the interstate system, it's the state. Then project selection process, I'll just read the answer here. Projects on the interstate system shall be selected by the state in cooperation with the NPO from the approved tip. The word cooperation legally means that the state has the lead and the NPO is permitted and encouraged to participate. This is a state-owned road. It is not MUMPO's road. MUMPO doesn't actually own any roads at all. As you know, in North Carolina, we don't have county roads. We have either state-owned roads or municipal roads. So this is a state-owned road. The DOT is the deciding agency, and the DOT is a creature of the executive branch. The executive leader is Governor Clark.
Yeah, I got the mic here, folks. Sorry. No, my question is for Senator Tart and Representative Bradford. My name is John O'Neill. I'm a general manager of a manufacturing plant. Our good moderator offered a rhetorical question, but I got a real question. I'm sitting with about 100 employees in Cornelius, good paying jobs, and we are in the midst of a very protracted discussion because our sales are going to double in the next 5 years. We are in the automotive supply base, contingent upon just-in-time deliveries to our manufacturing customers. We're expanding that customer base around the United States, foreign and locally run automotive manufacturers. And we've seen the description of the constrained transportation. I know that's going to impact my business here in Cornelius. My question is, given all these situations, if you were me as a general manager, and I'm in that discussion right now, my president's flying here tomorrow morning. It's not a rhetorical question for me, it's a real one. Where would you put your plant?
And your first name again is? John. John. You know, that's a, I get where we all are on this issue. Obviously, the tolls is a problem. Now, can you hear it? Is that a little better? All right. I'm going to back up for a little bit to give you a little, where my position is, where I feel on this issue right now and what's changed. We've talked a little bit about it. But one of the things, when we were looking at this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we were really getting into the detail of it, I understand I was actually mayor here. So we've been in the middle of it for a while. And the biggest single issue that sold us on doing this was, which we've heard a lot of times, I'm going to kind of retread some old stuff, is that you have two options. And I know Representative Bradford did this, and Representative Frey, when we sat down with members at NCDOT, the governor's office, and other people, we were told two options. You either wait 25 years, or the only option we can do right now, because we don't have funds available, is that we're going to have to toll this road. And as I've always said, it's in writing multiple times, doing nothing is not an option. We needed to provide some way for businesses to still connect with and move traffic, because you see where we are right now. But what changed, really, the biggest single factor for me was NC Connect, which, and I don't know if you're familiar with NC Connect, but that is the official title of the bond program that the governor has announced. We actually, as members of both chambers, with the governor yesterday, day before yesterday, had a joint briefing with the director of the Office of Budget, with the governor, with Tony Tatum, secretary, and others to review the plan and ideas, which is interesting. So that was the baseline that we said, okay, tolling is an acceptable answer. But he's come out recently and he said, oh, by the way, we now have the funds and the ability and debt capacity to borrow money to do roads. And they've used the STI, Strategic Transportation Initiative, which is the plan to do the roads. And it said what they're doing is following straight down the list, and they're using the ones that are environmentally ready. They've already had that work done, so that's what they're sticking to. Our problem is, which is, I'm not trying to pick on the governor at all, is they've come back and said that project's already decided and done, but all we've asked for is the opportunity, well, if we now, the economy's changed, things that we've done allowed us to have that capacity, we really would prefer not to have tolls. Even though he said MUMPO made that choice, they requested it. I would say, well, yeah, because we only have one or two choices. That's not really a choice. So what we were looking to do, and what we're going to have to do, because I think, I know we're talking to a crowd that already knows the answer. Nobody in here, you know, we did the thing we did a couple years ago at one of the Republican meetings. Everybody that wants tolls, raise your hand, right? So there are no hands. We don't want them. Given there's an alternative, we're trying to figure out how we move that forward, because we don't want to negatively impact businesses that are coming into this area. We've got issues because we're not going to allow trucks in those lanes. And that's maybe the biggest idea on the commerce that we're all looking at. I'm going to get us in trouble, and I'll get myself in trouble. That's okay. The thing that's interesting is we not only have the bond capacity to do this, to fund it, I actually think we've got enough, with the way we've turned the economy, in the last 5 years, when we took over control of both chambers, that being the right side of the aisle, the Republicans, we inherited a $2 billion deficit and a $2.8 billion debt on our unemployment benefit insurance. This year we paid off almost the $3 billion on the unemployment debt and unemployment benefit insurance debt. That is a huge relief. And now we've taken that $2 billion deficit and we've turned it around. In 5 years we'll have a $400 million surplus. We actually probably, and I say actually probably, that's kind of political speak I guess, but it's not knowing the specific numbers, I actually think we have the ability to take what's in the bond package, which is 1.4 for infrastructure and about the same amount for roads and transportation initiatives, which includes dredging and ferry work and all that, plus this project, and do a pay-go. We probably don't even have to borrow the money. We probably have the ability to pay it from revenue sources over a 5 to 10 year and just pay for it. We don't even have to borrow the money. Now, how's that for crazy? Now, the biggest issue, and I put this on Facebook, and I agree with Matt from the perspective. I've been in business for 35 years. I was a partner at Ernst & Young, and I mentioned it a few days ago because people said, well, we're behind because the contract's been signed. There's always, one of the things I always was interested in is the termination provision. And you can always terminate a contract. That's why I wasn't worried about 50 years. 50 years is great. The reason that 50 years is because there's no U.S. companies, banks that will lend money for that term. All 4 companies that bid all the financing was offshore because European companies will debt finance. And why would you do 50 years? It's like your mortgage. It's the difference of having a 15 or a 30-year mortgage. You can spend less on your monthly payment, you just spread it longer. And the key was having a termination provision, so at any time we want to execute and get out of it. And there are penalties associated with that. And it's doing the ROI. I think right now, that's why we've said, if we had the business support behind this, and we had the towns to come out and say behind it, and not trying to politicize this any more than we're already doing, That's the draft legislation that would defund it's right there. It's already written, it just has to be filed. But we're not going to file it unless we've got the ability. And I tell you, the problem is we've got 5 of us. I can tell you everybody in the House and the Senate up here is going to vote for it. That's 5 people out of 107. And the magic number after the 5 is 62. You need 62 other members between the House and the Senate to agree. And so it's got to be something that we can make a compelling case and an argument from our businesses, from our communities, to say this is not the option that we want. So exactly, John, a little bit of background, but to get to your question, obviously you want to make it as easy for businesses to conduct business and be an attraction, not an impediment and a competitive disadvantage when you're looking to relocate and grow your company, right? What you don't want is employees who have to pay 20 bucks a day to get to work, because they're not going to want to do that. And it's awful doggone hard to convince somebody to relocate to do that. To hear it, I get it, it makes sense. Now, the one thing I do want to also, because there's things, we talked, one last point, and this is kind of going back, is the delays. And I know Kirk mentioned the penalties. That was something that bugged the crud out of me as well. Why are we waiving penalties and why is it delayed? Well, I actually talked to Anthony Fox's office in Washington, D.C. And it turns out it was the TIFIA loans that they were having problems with, and we'll get into specifics. But it wasn't actually Centra that was delaying it, and not. I thought they weren't getting the equity in a timely fashion and they couldn't close. It was actually the U.S. government had delayed it. So it was the feds that were delaying it, not Centra, not the state, and therefore they couldn't be penalized because it wasn't their fault. So anyway.
Which segues to a very interesting part. Get this back to Mac, because Mac and Waltrip Racing have worked in the last week tirelessly to come up with a plan that they would like to invite you to be a part of. It will involve us, but it's going to more importantly involve you. So I'm going to let you talk about your business plan going forward.
Now for some good news. Nobody's smiling, so okay. The business plan. So how did we get here? We are all here at the summit looking for workable solutions, because right now, I think we'll all agree we have a non-workable, non-solution. Last week, some business leaders got together with our local representatives, and we had a discussion. We're like, okay, contract signed, you know, the train is headed into the station. What can we do to, you know, ensure our economic ability to grow? And we were able to come to what we believe a workable solution. So the only trick of this is it's going to take involvement from you, because right now the contract's signed, it's a done deal. It's going to take some legwork to get us to where we need to go. So what do we need? You know, I think the plan needs to be to add general purpose lanes on I-77 from exits 20 to 36. You know, this is the economic backbone that we require to ensure prosperity and growth. This is something we have to have. Charlotte can have the toll lanes south of 20, that's not a problem. Exactly. So, you know, it's the nicest way possible to say that we as businesses need that infrastructure. So the way forward, everyone here is in this room because of the call to action. That's awesome. And it's, I'm glad I'm not just crazy. So the way forward, we can attempt to defund the express lanes. That's going to take pretty much a total business involvement. Every business needs to contact their local representatives and let them know what the consequences are, what the economic outlook is if we aren't able to follow our business plan. And then, you know, okay, stopping the toll lanes, what's the other element of that? Because I can tell you firsthand after being at one of the meetings in Charlotte, yes, that process would take a long time. So we need to talk to the boss, and we need to ask the boss to add widening I-77 and general purpose lanes into the bond package. So that bond package is specifically for economic growth. You know, that is, the letter of that package is exactly what we need, and we are faced with a 50-year non-workable solution. So this is the best way forward. So general purpose lanes, I estimated $200 million. That's $100 million to build the road, and then also $100 million worth of contract cancellation expense. A drop in the bucket, really, when you look at the big picture. This is what needs to happen. So the existing bond package is $1.45 billion, or is that half of it? Okay, so it's around $3 billion. Add another $200 million is, you know, pocket change for the amount of development and economic growth that this would spur. So, and honestly, defunding the I-77 toll lanes could completely pay for the bond package alone in tax revenue. I don't think that's a very far-fetched conclusion to jump to. So, supporting the governor's bond package, that's something that's going to ensure growth for all citizens in North Carolina and all the businesses that are involved. And if we can get behind that effort, that gives more credibility to the economic development effort. It seems to be the best way forward. So how do we do this? We've got to convince Jeff here to submit a bill. Fortunately, he's ahead of me and he's got something. And then the other part of that is adding the general purpose lanes to the governor's bond package. Technically, I don't know how that needs to happen. You know, that's more complicated, but you know, that's what they're for. So what do we need to do to get to this point? I think we need to get total involvement from all the municipalities, just like we had before with delaying the toll lanes. We need to get them to pass resolutions supporting Jeff's bill and tell them that we mean business. You know, if we can get every city saying that this is what we need, you've got to listen to us, they'll listen. So action items, you know, we've got to talk to the local government. We've got to let them know what we need. Typically, the General Assembly listens, you know, to the local municipalities. And then once, you know, we pass at the local level, then things have more weight. It's not just the businesses that are here. We've got to convince them that this is our best way forward, and we need to get there at all costs. We can't afford not to do it. So supporting the infrastructure bond package, that becomes a win-win for local businesses and ensures a long-term growth potential for the state. So, is it possible? I'd like to present my first piece of evidence. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I'm hoping this room is the way, and just the beginning.
So, I'll sum this up. A week ago, we were very happy that in an 8-0 vote, Mecklenburg County Commissioners, representing 1 million people, said delay. And the next day, they signed the contract. And the next day, Mac called me and said, we cannot allow this to happen. What do we do? And I called my good friend Jeff Tart. Ironically, on the way to Greenville, North Carolina, on I-40, which was wide open and no one was there, as I rode in there at night, and it's about 8 o'clock on I-40 in the evening, and Senator Tart said, well, here's what we can do. He said, I can take a bill that I'm holding, and I will submit it, asking the legislature to defund the toll project from exit around mile marker 20 north. But here's what you have to do. You have to get me 4 towns with resolutions in support for me to have a chance of even getting this before a committee. I said, Jeff, I think I can do that. Let me think about it. So on Thursday morning, I called him and I said, okay, I think we can do that, but then what do we do? He said, well, then you got to convince a whole lot of people in the state legislature. And I said, well, I think I know how to do that. Let me call you back. And I called Mac. And I said, Mac, here's what I've got to have. I have to have enough power from the business community in North Mecklenburg and Iredell County that Raleigh and the governor have to listen to me. The city of Charlotte Chamber says this is a great idea, but the city of Charlotte Chamber does not live in North Mecklenburg and Iredell County. So it's incumbent upon the dormant power that we have here. Do you think you can marshal enough of the business community to help me help Jeff, and then together we will go out and we'll help ourselves and we'll help the governor get his bond package perhaps through the legislature. And beyond that, we will then help him pass it. Now, you know, what I didn't tell them is that if he doesn't want to join me, then he has a harder time passing it because I'm not going to help him. But we think that's a doable thing. Senator Tartt already has a bill in his hand. So your goal, his goal, is we have to have people come up here, sign their name, that they support the idea of defunding the current project, asking for this project to be put on the NC Connect, and a willingness to then go out and support NC Connect. And it can't just be the people in this room, it's got to be other players. We have to convince Lowe's Corporation that this is a good thing for them, and Ingersoll Rand. And the NASCAR community has figured this out, and they have already been supportive, and I'm counting on them to be equally and more so. To say, you can change it. You widen I-85, you can change it. The fact of the matter is, the good guys in Raleigh that we put up there have changed the process, like David Harkin said. When this was first proposed, this was the lesser of a bunch of evils. They went, they fixed that. We can now use what we have in front of us. This is our last chance. So I'm going to need everybody to put pressure on the towns, because I'm going to let Senator Tartt speak to what he will do and what he will need, because that's the political reality. But the business community then has to seriously get behind this effort to talk about the damage that will happen if we go forward, and the alternative that we have going forward if we change this plan, and how we will help to increase this across, not just for us, but for other rural counties that got caught in the same kind of trap that we did. So I'm going to let Jeff talk to the specifics of what would have to happen and what he needs us to do.
Well, I'm not here to rain on everybody's parade, but you got to realize this is, and I also don't want to create false hope. I mean, this is such a long shot. This is Steph Curry trying to make that last three-pointer in the Final Four, and it just banged off the rim a little bit, and we just missed it. Representative Frederick, Representative Bradford, and they've been all out trying to get this addressed, working with you. I mean, there's no matter, and I'm not picking, but I see a lot of the guys who were here this week that visited from Wide I-77, Sharon and others that came out and saw Valley and grew up, and that was good. But here's the thing, and I'm going to share some things on Facebook. I said, if we had 3,000 protesters and 10,000 signatures on the petition, they're going to take notes. They cannot. What happened, like this week, we had 12 people. That doesn't have credibility. I mean, they know you're out there, but it's sort of like just a little bit of noise in the background. And they go, obviously it's not a big deal. There's only 12 people that show up. The region is not that worried. They like Tulsa. They're excited about it because obviously that's the only group that's against it. So what we have to do is in the power of numbers. It's in the power of getting the message, and can't be just residents. And I mean, that's important, obviously, because you are our boss. I mean, I get that. You put us in, and if we're not doing the things you want, you do us out, send us home. I can go fishing. It can not be that bad, I guess, on some days. But what we got to do, if we really want to try to change this, and it's kind of what Bruton did when he went and kind of put Mayor Padgett in a corner. We need to put, if we're going to do this, you need to, in a sense, push the governor the Secretary of Transportation, and all of us, the electeds, in a corner that says, this is what we want. And the best way to do that is the business community. And it's not the citizens. If you could rally 10,000 people in Raleigh, they're going to notice there's an issue here from just the citizens. But it's going to be probably easier to rally the businesses because you can't ignore that. That is the economic viability for the entire region. We are the engine that drives the entire state, the Charlotte region. We are critical to the state, and they need to know that, and for our businesses. So the businesses need to rally around, and we talked 3 or 4 of the big ones. We talked about the NASCAR team. That's important, but it really has got to have a breadth from Mooresville all the way here. Then what we're going to need, and this is the bigger lift, I think, and I could be totally wrong, but it's getting the town boards. It was one thing to get them to say, okay, we're asking for a little step back delay, let's look at it. It's another whole thing to get those boards to agree to say, we want you to not do the toll through Centro. What we want to do is general purpose lanes, and we want to do that through a bonding package or some alternative financing mechanism. That is a big lift. That will get Raleigh's attention. Businesses behind it, the communities behind it. And there's no magic. This is easy math. Like I said earlier, you need 67 is the magic number in Raleigh. There's 50 senators, and there are 120 House members, and you need half in each chamber plus 1. That's where the 67 comes from. And that is going to be, if we thought that changing and getting the municipalities to pass the resolutions hard, it's going to be infinitely harder to rally around 62 other elected officials statewide that are going to say, yes, we're going to let you do this, because now we've got that little bit of penalty that we're going to take that money, whatever it ends up being, and if we just say, yes, we agree, we're going to write you a check for $100 million, go away, leave us alone. I would just leave the caveat without getting into details. I don't think we have to do that either. I wouldn't just write him a check right out of the gate because we're in the contract negotiations, right? Make him come and chase a little bit of that. But that issue is going to be a tough sell in Raleigh to say, yeah, we kind of screwed up, we really don't want to go there, we can pay for it ourselves now, and the region doesn't want to do it. Because again, depending on where on the SCI, I think one of the problems we're going to run into is the ranking of the project. I think if we could break up the project and just look at 36 to 20 or 19, it would score completely differently than the entire combined project. Because I'm going to argue, and I don't mean this, don't take this totally wrong. I've got cameras, I'm kind of messed up anyway here. I don't really care what happens from about exit 13 on in to the South Carolina state line right now. We need to be a little, provincial and worry about what's happening in our backyard, because everybody else is going to do that around projects. As an example, when we looked at the STI and some of the projects, there's 10 projects that not normally wouldn't have been in the list. And we were sitting talking with all the senators alone. And we're saying, well, we really just need to stick to the list. And there was 10 that fall in or below because of the EPA crap that allowed them to jump over others that are actually higher on the list. And I had 2 senators in the room, and they said, well, this one project really seems like a good thing that we should consider doing out of the 10. Maybe that one should be considered. And another senator chimed up and said, well, this one's maybe worth considering that we should leave in as well. And I kind of raised my hand and said, just by chance, whose districts are those 2 projects in? Well, guess what? So, we talk about taking the politics out of this, but it's not totally removed. And so, coming back around, a really long answer, because we need the resolutions from the communities, we need the businesses to get behind and pressure, and then we need to pressure the executive branch. And it's not just Governor McCrory, it's not just Secretary Tata, there's a whole structure of things going on. So we're really looking to kind of change the rules from how we've said we're going to do funding and road projects. But here's the gotcha at the end of the day. Whether this is fair or not, it's fair for us because this is where we live right now. And this is why the representatives have been behind this and fighting for you like crazy the last 3 or 4 weeks. They changed the rules on us. They said we don't have money, we can't pay for it, do this or nothing. But then they said we've got lots of money, and by the way, we're going to prioritize, but you don't get ranked in this group. Well, if you put us on the same playing field, the same rules, then I don't know where we fall. I hear we'll fall high, I hear we'll stay the same.
but let's know what the answer is. But if we have the ability to fund it, and we have alternatives, we should have the opportunity to be at the same table to be considered. That's my only point. That's why I'm saying if we have enough support, that we have a reasonable shot to, because this is going to hack off a lot of people. There's no question. Pat will not be happy. Tony already doesn't hardly talk to me. I got calls from so many people on this thing you wouldn't believe on the other side that want us to just quietly go away. Or to say, hey, you're not going to change. Well, that's okay. But again, I didn't think Britain would actually talk about moving the Speedway to Texas. But you got enough money, you can do what you want to do, right? And that pressure from an economic perspective will get their attention. I absolutely believe that. Not a small effort at all to go do. But more power to us if we can get it done. And Mac, I tip my hat to you because I'm going to go back to the Margaret Mead quote, right, which we talked about. And I'll paraphrase it, I always screw it up. But there's nothing that gets done accomplished that's not accomplished actually by a small group of thoughtful, concerned citizens. And that needs to be, and I appreciate the citizen side of this, but in this case, it's going to need to be the business community that drives this if we're going to make it happen. That's just my 2 cents.
So to clarify, we're not having Charlotte involved because it will rank us in a different position so that we have a better chance of getting through their system and get approved to build our own general road. If we include Charlotte, that is going to skew.
Actually, I think what we're trying to do, the question is whether we should include Charlotte or not because of the rankings and going through the SDI.
We have a much better chance of getting this through Charlotte's inventory.
Yeah, actually what we're trying to do right now is get a focus on saying, this is a financing issue, is where I see it. It's not approving the project, disapproving the project. What we're really trying to do is change the equation and say, we don't want to pay for this through toll bonds and TIFIA and all that. What we want to do is be part of, just be treated just like everybody else and be an opportunity to bond it, which would put us in. Then we got to fight. The second question becomes where it falls, when it can be done. Because I can tell you, here's the other side, the flip side of this point. We might win this thing. What happens if they say, oh, by the way, we are going to pull it. We're going to cancel the contract. By the way, you go back to the formula. What happens? They say, okay, now it's 25 years before you get anything. I mean, that could happen. But,
I distinctly remember over 2 years ago, just before the hurricane devastated eastern North Carolina, there were numerous articles in the newspaper claiming that monies were set aside for the widening of I-77. The state legislature started planning when the hurricane came and said, oh, we've got a disaster here. We need all the highway money to go to resurrect eastern North Carolina. So I think that's a valid guilt trip when you are dealing with the rest of the legislature to shoot us to the top because they took our money to rebuild eastern North Carolina. And if you spend any time in eastern North Carolina, you've got a myriad of 4-lane roads that are unoccupied going from nowhere to nothing.
well, the time it was going on, when you guys were hearing that, what has happened under the old formula, when we talk about it, you get different buckets of money. We talk about widening the loops down. There was a loop fund. That's what money stayed in, and it couldn't be taken out for higher priority items. Money being maybe moved out, and it was politics. That's why the SDI was created in 2013 to get us out of that mode, potentially. But I'll tell you, there's no magic, and it's not like this is a new problem. In 1990, NCDOT issued a report that said I-77, so this is 1990. Hard copy report stated from their study. So it was done in the mid to early 80s. They were going through this. From I-40 to the South Carolina state line, I-77 should be widened, having 8 lanes, 4 in each direction, general purpose, and it should be completed by 2010. I think we just tell them we're okay with a little bit of delay. It's just a few years late. Well, what you said you were going to do.
I have a question, Jeff. I was one of the ones who did go to Raleigh Tuesday, and I wanted to say that everyone I talked to in the General Assembly, all the offices, all the elected officials, They were so very polite and nice. The legislative assistants were wonderful. So I appreciated that. One of them said, well, one of the legislative assistants, when I presented our case, she said, what you need to do is talk to the Committee on Appropriations for the Department of Transportation for the Senate. That bill is now in the Senate. And she printed out the list for me of the people on that committee. There were about 8 or 10 people. Then she wrote down all the room numbers for me, and I made sure I visited all those offices before I left. So I'm just wondering, you know more about process than I do, but should we concentrate on those 8 or 10 senators first, because they're the ones who can defund that now? Can you please speak to that?
Yeah, and the bill would just give them the support. That's the whole intent. If we walk in, I mean, we can convince them, but I'm guessing that won't happen. So the idea is, if you got community businesses, we have a piece of legislation that says, here's our desire. That's exactly where it's going next. So Sharon's correct. The key people that would actually change this and have the ability, but it's still got to get approved as a budget item, is the transportation chairs of both chambers. So there's 2 or 3 key people: Bill Raven, Kathy Harrington, Wesley Meredith on the Senate side, Bill Brawley. I don't know who else is on this. Robert, you remember? Or you guys, John, you guys know who are the transportation chairs?
Representative Torbett.
Okay, yeah, John Torbett is Gastonia, where same place Kathy Harrington, and then the big appropriations chairs. And we go. I list names just to show off that I know them, but it's the appropriation chairs, the big, what's called the big chairs, and then the transportation committee chairs. So yeah, you're right. It's about 6. It's about a dozen people between both chambers, and that's where this actually would go to. Now we can actually take it to the floor, or we could try to get it done in the budget. My guess is, though, and the reason why I said the vote, because it's probably going to have to be a vote, because the budget is going to get submitted and be worked on in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So then it's just in conference committees going back and, you know, kind of horse trading what's in, what's out. This probably gets, because of what it would do to NCDOT, probably makes more sense if they actually ran it as an amendment and did it that way. The budget's another alternative. I just think that's even harder. But the focus, back to those 12 people, that's where the polite pressure, but I think you got to do it politely, like you guys were doing in Raleigh, the right thing. But just to walk in and say, we want you to do this, not going to happen. You got to have the hammer behind you.
So how do you get the signatures that you need from the business community so that you can walk in not only with the bill, but support from us?
I'd like to answer that. This meeting didn't even exist a week ago, and I've got 150 people here. So we don't know who they are and who the people are we need to talk to. You know, this is Noli the beginning.
May I comment, please?
Absolutely.
I'm just a concerned citizen, and some people know me. My name is Dick Beck. I've had a correspondence with Jim Puckett. To your point of getting the business community involved, reading the minutes from the North Carolina NCDOT board meeting, which was, I think, May 7th, happened to stumble on a page about a small town, eastern North Carolina, where NCDOT had already planned. They were going to build a road. They were going to take out 78 homes, take out businesses, da-da-da-da-da-da. One gentleman in the business he happened to own a salvage yard. He said, this isn't going to fly. So we have to get organized. And he got 3,000 emails, so many emails, letters, and whatever. And NCDOT, even though all the plans were done, I'm not sure if the contract was issued or not, they pulled the plans, relocated the road 4.5 miles away, and saved the town. The business has to get, you have to send emails. My wife says, man, you're on the computer again. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sending emails. I've been told I've sent so many emails, I can't remember how many. But you got to do it. You have to be polite, but you have to be firm. And when I came in here, I said, well, I'm not going to support bonds. But I said to my wife years ago, I got so upset when I lived in upstate New York. Here they do $1 billion bond issue. It's just like bonds, got to pay for this. But guess what? I can get across the cities in upstate New York in 20 minutes. Interstate highways. No tolls. The bonds are the best way to go. I would ask that maybe a consideration, and Senator Tart would know best, why will not NCDOT, and I've asked the question, score under STI, exit 23 to 36? Why won't they do it? I don't know. The question can be asked, and they won't answer it. They know the answer. But the business community, you got to send your emails, you got to write your letters, you got to get involved. That's all I can say.
And to add to that, in the nicest way possible, at a minimum, we need exits 20 through 36, but in the big picture, that should just be the first step. What we need is 8 lanes from Charlotte all the way up to I-40. And ultimately, that needs to be the goal, I think, from a business perspective, but we have to take baby steps. And hopefully this is the beginning.
Is there anybody here from Lowe's or Ingersoll Rand? I would say that we have been trying very hard to get into Ingersoll Rand and Lowe's to talk to their executives and explain to them the impact on their business, their company, their employees, and we've had no luck. They marginalize us as some of the elected leaders have. We need elected leaders to stand beside people in this business community, to walk in the door of Ingersoll Rand and Lowe's and to get to the senior executives and sit down and have some credibility. And I think this is an opportunity, and what I hear Senator Tart, and hopefully Representative Bradford, and Charles Jeter, Representative Charles Jeter, is he here? No. Maybe with some success we could walk in the door and have that conversation and get that kind of power and leverage behind us.
Hey, good evening. I'm John Bradford. We've heard a lot from Senator Tarts. He represents the Senate side. I represent the House side. Representative Fraley had another meeting, so he scooted out. You know, I do want to weigh in here because we see an action plan. We see Senator Tart has a blank bill. This is a long shot, period. There's a few things we've not talked about that I want to make sure you understand. If Senator Tart, if we get the local municipalities sort of behind this, if you will, to give Jeff the horsepower on the Senate side to get leadership, to hear this, and then to get to the floor. And let's just assume that the Senate gets it out of their channel. It now has to come to the House. And I have to do the same exact thing that he does on the Senate. We have 120 members. It takes 61 on my side to pass anything. You have a handful of representatives that are impacted by this project. A handful. So it is a larger state issue in the sense that you're going to have to get to other representatives. And you have my commitment that if it comes out of the Senate, I will stand tall to do my part. And I don't want to speak for anyone else. I won't speak for Jeter. I can't speak for Fraley. To try to move it along. But follow me for one moment. We're talking a lot about the NC Connect bond package. Understand that the bond package on its own, regardless of this project, the bond package on its own still has to pass the Senate. Still has to pass the House, okay? And if it passes both chambers, folks, it still has to go on a statewide ballot referendum, which means the voters will decide. So let's just assume that this action plan we just saw really, the stars align, the moon aligns, and it clicks along, and it gets to the Senate, and it gets to the House, and the bonds get amended, and the money gets added, and then the bonds are supported from the Senate and the House. There is a chance it could go on a statewide referendum and fail. And I just want you all to know that, because that's something we're not talking about. That is something that is out of our control, out of all your control. So if we get that far, you will probably become the biggest cheerleaders for the bonds, and you're going to reach out to your friends in New Bern, and your friends in Nashville, and your friends in Raleigh, and your friends in Rocky Mount, and explain to them how great these bonds are. Because without a positive vote from the voters on the bond referendum, everything in the bond package, and I'm making the assumption that at that point, if we were lucky enough to even get this in, everything in the bond package does not happen. And I just want to make sure everyone knew that, because that hasn't been discussed. I think it's important to know. Thank you.
Were there these many hurdles to get this totally done?
Yeah.
Were there that many hurdles to get this completed and signed and so forth?
Well, I'm only, my goal here today is to show you I'm here listening, and I just want to share with you the rest of the story, right? I mean, folks, take it or leave it, that's really what has to happen. And now you know, because, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, anything's possible, folks, anything. I just want to make sure that I share that with you.
I have a question. I'll tell you one thing, and let me tell you why I'm pretty passionate about this. The thing I love about North Mecklenburg, and I include South Iredell, is that we are a group of people, those of us who were born here tend to be revolutionaries. Those who chose to come live among us have been the same. If there's anywhere that can do this, it is us. Concord did it, they had a billionaire. But it can be done. And I'll tell you a bit of it. In 2005, CMS needed to build schools, and they had a really poorly designed bond package. I was your county commissioner in 2005 and said, don't vote for it. And everybody said, if you do not pass these bonds, you will not get schools for 5 years. And I pled with the people and said, do not vote for a bad bond package, and I will get you schools. And we voted it down. We went out, we did COPS, which was something completely different. We borrowed money against present assets, and the schools that we're sitting in today were because we defeated a bad plan. When everybody said, it's stupid to cut your nose off to spite your face. But it takes everybody, and it takes, John Bradford is exactly right, it's a mountain. So I'm not, and I don't mean belittle small business, the reason this is possible is because this guy and Mr. Johns had the power and the willingness to say, you know what? Micheal Waltrip Racing is a pretty big organization. We have a very large presence in the media. And we have some other friends who are large organizations with big presence and understand marketing and understand what it takes to develop a region. And we are part of a multi-billion-dollar industry located in this area, centered in North Mecklenburg and Morrisville. So I think there's enough power in this area to influence the rest of North Carolina. But first, we have to influence Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, and Morrisville to give him the ability, and John the ability, to go to Raleigh and say, there's an awful lot of people who think this is a bad idea, and they're not just angry folks because they're going to pay $20 on the toll. It's businesses, multi-billion-dollar conglomerate of businesses saying this will strangle us, and we're going to have to look elsewhere. That's what it's going to take. So, there were 10 people in Raleigh. I'm going to take a moment and say, without those 10 people who've been fighting for 2 years, we wouldn't be here today. It is a small group of people. It is Chuck and Valley and those guys who have kept this hot while we ran through the details, and Kurt and Haas who found the details. But today, it's now our turn, and it's the business's turn. Mac's going to tell you how you get involved, but it has to be beyond this meeting today. It has to be, we do have to get in front of the Ingersoll Rands and the Lowe's, and I'm going to count on people with higher pay scales than I, or him.
And Jim and Mac, just one thing I'm going to say. I mean, if we don't have the majority of the CEOs and CFOs saying, yeah, we want this in the towns, that's going to be another message.
Right.
It's great we got a small group of a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people, 2,000 people don't want it. But the region is not saying that. So we need to hear the message. Is it really the businesses really don't want this, and the towns really don't want this given if they have another option? Or maybe it's just a small, unhappy group? We need to know. Which is it?
Exactly. Yep.
Jeff, I was wondering if you could answer a little bit, looking at the bigger picture. I think it's important for us to understand it. And Jim and I talked this morning a little more, but in my humble opinion, I think that this is bigger than just North Mecklenburg, because this is the first project of McCrory in his toll road plan. And so I guess I would ask you is, what is our strategy if you're giving McCrory his safe phasing out, for lack of a better word, due because of the political nature of this particular thing?
I'm going to challenge part how you open, because
okay.
I know you don't have a humble opinion. John.
Yeah, the tolling, which is another interesting thing. There's like 9 projects on the list to get tolled around the state. we're really the first. But unfortunately, 3 of them are here. The first 3 kind of happened in Mecklenburg because it's 485 and some of the others that they're looking at. But here's another thing, just a little subtle thing. As they were doing the debrief the other day in the General Assembly with all the members and the governor and the others, they threw up one slide and several points, and one of them just, you know, nobody caught, nobody's paying that much attention to, John and I are, and it's a subtle thing that said, oh, by the way, we're going to defer the consideration of tolling I-95. Interesting little point that just kind of blows by everybody. So why did we not get to kind of defer the consideration and the other side of the state always gets to? I don't have the answer to that. I don't know what's driving that. There are other issues out there. Robbie mentioned Port Authority. There's priorities. Actually, the ports, I think, are in the other half of the bond, but yeah, those are it's all priorities. We're trying to take politics out of it, but I guarantee you when you had 170 members, the governor, the secretary, it's all politics. I mean, they're driving. They're trying to take some of that out to let things stand on their own. But at the end of the day, people are looking at, you know, what's happening in my backyard, as we should, because if we don't stand up and fight for ourselves, nobody else is going to do that either. So, from that standpoint, totally, which isn't it, this is a sidebar, maybe more direct to your point, John, and tying into Sharon's comment about who do we focus on. I had Senator Raven tell me, Bill, and he's a great guy, believe me, very pragmatic, very conservative, but he said, and John Torbitt, same thing, chair on the House, that we're going to toll, because they don't see any other viable way to raise enough transportation dollars to meet the total demand of roads and stuff we have. Throughout the state. I mean, we've got like a $70 billion backlog of identified projects, and we've got like 10 million, 8 million, or billion coming in to take care of that. So we're always going to be behind, which is another bill, which and I know some of you looked at, I've had Kurt and some of the others, is you should all go look at, which the other half of this equation is Senate Bill 639. That's a transportation funding plan that takes us out of the tolling business, takes us out of the gas tax business to the way we are. And I'd like to say this is my pure genius, but it's not, but I've contributed. This really started with Charlie Jeter. And it's taken his ideas from his plan that he's got on the House side, and we really expanded to try to say there needs to be multiple ways of raising funds to pay for the road needs that we have. And this, I would love input back from experts and people to say, and do you guys buy into this? And this doesn't do things like paying for by the mile and stuff. It lowers the gas tax, it creates a kind of a fee based on vehicle sizes, it does something like Oregon we adopted called the heavy levy, so the trucks pay a little more because they put more wear and tear, but it's to spread it across multiple venues and keep us out of tolling.
I'd like to bring the meeting to a close. I respect everybody's time here. I got 2 little ones at home. Give everybody a round of applause for coming. I've got a copy of the business plan here. Businesses that are willing to, please read this. I think it is we need a little bit of leadership, and hopefully this is going to kickstart it. The bond package is obviously an important way to get it funded, but there are other ways to get it funded. It's not the one and only. The most important thing is that the toll lanes equal an economic disadvantage for this area, and we absolutely cannot let that continue. And it's going to take each and every one of us in here to make sure that that doesn't happen.
One last thing I want to do, I want to thank John Bradford for being here and doing this. John Fraley was here. David Curtis is somewhere. He showed up. He took a call. So David's here. He's a senator, represents Iredell. So your local guys are trying to listen, trying to be involved, but we also, and this is going to be a weird way to close this, my favorite saying after the first term is there's an endless supply of stupid in state government. But what we also have to do, this is going to sound real self-serving maybe, we've got to be careful not to do stupid. So yes, if we want to defund that, and this isn't a priority, we still got like 19 other road projects here. What we don't want then is backlashing on and saying, oh, it's interesting, those move down, or yeah, we're not going to do those. So it's kind of it's also a little finesse that's got to go on in this process as well.
I've seen that petition. Did you put that on the
Yeah, the petition, I don't think the petition's the way we need to continue. This is a business plan that says that this plan supports defunding the I-77 express lanes exits 20 to 36. That is key. Inclusion of the general purpose lanes for I-77 exits 20 through 36 in the governor's transportation bond package. Whether that passes or not, you know, is really just a bonus if this moves forward. And you know, honestly, the bond package is a good economic stimulus engine. You know, we all need to take a look at it carefully. But as businesses, this plan has got merit, and I think it's something that we can get the community behind. And if we can get everybody on board, it's going to be very difficult to not listen to the people in this room. So
what's the next step?
The next step is this business plan. So, you know, this basically says that you support it. Copies of this would go to each of the municipalities, and then you're going to need some boots on the ground going to these meetings saying that, you know, what's on this paper really has merit. I'm more than happy to take that this economic economic impact study that I've done. That's going to go on the internet. No one here seemed to have any objections to that. I got an A on it. So everyone needs to take a look at that. You know, show that to the businesses. They need to see the truth. You know, that is the truth, and we just have to move forward. Ma'am? Well, this is at the moment only in paper. You know, real signatures, I think, carry more weight. It's more difficult to do, but when you've got a handwritten signature, and tonight, man, that's going to be really difficult.
I think what's going to happen, though, it's like we said, and we were talking about it, Wayne and others, is if Griffin Hiplock and Mr. Lama, they show up, CEOs of Ingersoll, of Lowe's, you know, Michael Waltrip shows up, Joe Gibbs shows up, Rick Hendrick shows up, they're going to get a visit. They will be taken seriously by the government. They will be, they just do, whether we like it or not, because of the impact they have, the number of jobs these companies take care of. Signature, they can put a letter together, that'll be important. The key is going to be the next step in organizing those 10, 12. We talk about 12 wasn't a big number. The right 12 at that level will be a totally different number, and they can have an impact. The other thing I want to do before we get away, though, is recognize Senator David Curtis is here. David, if you raise your hand. He is helping us as well. Actually, David said he can take care of this all by himself, so we appreciate you, David.
At the moment, well, exit.
You can find me. There, you can find me. Jim Puckett, just Google Jim Puckett, Mecklenburg County. So if you support it, send me an email and say you support the program. We can email you back this presentation to give to anybody you need to give to. If you know someone who you believe is influential, if you know someone, if you have any influence with any medium-sized company or further, let them get in contact with me. They'll be in contact with both John and Jeff. We will talk to it. We're building a coalition. Mac's going to start to keep building it. Mr. John's going to help keep building that. But we just need names and people who think it's a good idea that we can then start to put in front of the right folks. But the next part's going to be emailing the 4 towns. Would you say that's the next step?
You know, that's a good question. Again, I'll let Woody Washington stay after, and he'll answer that for all of you. I'll help you out there. You know, it's. I don't know if it's emailing, maybe. I mean, if 1,000 emails are going to get everybody's attention, but it's really talking to the business leaders, talking to the town leaders. That's really the key.
So before you leave, if you want to sign this, definitely read it before you sign it.
While the Chamber of Commerce is on board, can we get their support to get the word out to the businesses?
that don't know about this?
It doesn't matter to me what they say.
But we could use their help.
What goes on this paper, we could use their help. You know, I don't understand why there's been contention before, but we are the chamber. We need to speak directly to the chamber and ask them for their help.
We need some help. And EDC.
Well, it's two things. One, the Chamber of Commerce represents businesses. The businesses will tell them what to do. I do have individual past chairs of Chamber of Commerce who will say, as a business person, this is the right thing to do. I appreciate this idea as a business person. Though I will continue to ask. We will continue to ask for those people to step forward and say, I can't speak for the Chamber of Commerce. I can speak for someone who knows and understands this area. But you have to keep in mind, Chamber of Commerce is a membership-driven position. They are not the people that need to change politicians. We are the people that change politicians, okay? You have to do it. We talk to the business owners. We will take care of it. That's why this is done by Mac and Mr. John. Okay? Right here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Find me if you need me.
I've been trying to get my hand up and say the same damn thing.
There's 4 cities that's got chambers of commerce that have a lot of members that they can reach out to if they will help the businesses. They say they will.
Blue with white stripes. If you're a member of the chamber, contact Bill Russell, Mike Russell, to tell them you want a representation. Because right now they've got 2 or 3 members on there that are blind.
North Carolina Truck. Is it?
Hey, Mr. Chuck.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. You have a business card? I'm sorry?
All right.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get some action.
Well, you know what? Where the hell is Lowe's and where the hell is Ingersoll Rand? That's a big question of the night.
Well, I agree, but the same as McCrory as well. I mean, when is he going to listen to us? I know one of the main reasons, like, you know, I'm a Republican, but I'm not. I've really never voted for many Democrats other than I voted for Pat Coffin. That said, I'm not voting for any Republican that supports these tolls.
Right. No, I'm not either.
You know, it's because one of the main reasons that they said we were going to get when McCrory got in there.
Right.
A lot of my friends told me, well, at least we'll finally get
a guy.
We finally are going to get representation from Mecklenburg, and we would get some road funding back. And what happened?
Well, and I thought the same thing when Fox got the appointment too.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, perfect, we're in, we're finally going to get a road. Yeah, we've lived here a long time, and I remember when we were promised all those lanes.
Yeah, I've only been here 7 years, but in 7 years, 4 of my children were born here, and we want to stay here forever.
Yeah, their grandkids are here now, and we're thinking they're leaving. I'm done. I'm about done. I was at Target Thursday in Mooresville. I live here. I left at 4:10. I got home at 6:45 to go to the eye doctor.
It's ridiculous.
And
like when we go
meeting,
grocery shopping at like 8 at night.
That's what we do too. Remember, well, that crypto meeting, the dude that said, well, the problem is you people are using it to run your local errands. And I sent him an email back the next day.
I don't know anybody. Yeah, but I don't know anybody who's actually doing it. And he says going 2 to 3 miles. You can't go 2 to 3 miles and get on 77 and off 77 because the exits are 3 miles apart.
I had 5 miles to my doctor appointment. That took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to get home from. If I would have gone the other way, God only, I'd be, I don't know. And I was,
you'd still be there.
Oh yeah, I was peeing my pants out there too. It was horrible. But
I was driving up here today and I was thinking to myself, we should just start like, I should start like a food stop.
Oh, there you
and
go.
park it right on 77.
Make a
like,
killing.
who wants burritos? Burritos. Cold beer.
Make a killing.
Soda.
Well, I hope this, we get, you know, sure we'll hear again.
Yeah, well, let's get these resolutions.
What do you think Turt's really, I don't either. I think he's talking outside his mouth. Because it's too late.
Well, he knows it's going to be, he's in trouble politically.
Oh, yeah.
They are all in trouble politically. And that's the key. If it doesn't get, it's like, here's the deal, guys. Get a stop or go home.
Right.
Get a stop or go home.
That's right. I don't know.
There's other people that could do the job.
You're doing a great job, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good one.
Chuck, I just want to say hello. I've seen you, money.
Sorry, I didn't know you were
great. So I'll catch up with you on Facebook.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for all your help. And I just want Jim Hart needs to understand there may have been 12 people there, but there were 6,000 signatures. Someone needs to remind him of that because it's insulting and demeaning.
Well, that was the
I agree. I agree. Today is nice, Chuck, and because we're here, and I want to be able to have this again. But
I mean, he says it doesn't have an impact. So why do petitions get delivered that they don't have impact?
You know what's really funny is he says we've got to get the whole state to rally around us, and then he says I don't care about anything other than between exit 30 and 13. You say that, and the rest of the state ain't really going to care too much about 13.
I tell you, I think it's going to be pressure on these politicians that they're going to be replaced.
That's it. That's the only thing. You tell them stop it or find a new job. That's the
only thing they care about.
I meant to bring it, but I forgot it. So stop by. All right.
No way.
Are you?
Comment me.
I
was the one looking for the business attorney.
Sorry.
I feel like I need to get out of the way.
And on the Max for a drink.
Absolutely,
Yeah, just
I'll be
go
there. Yeah, we'll be there right after this. And tomorrow, I'll be up here doing some interviews.
Give me a call.
I'm gonna fly. I gotta pee.
We'll be at Mac's Speed Shop.
Yeah, we have our last day of school tomorrow.
This was for people that haven't used other than that. We know what their conference is, and we didn't need to. And had some good questions there. A month. They're going to speed up everything they can, and we've got some
Y'all have any questions for me? Bad ideas. I don't know. I'll send this out.
We have continued to defend
speed this up.
They should follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, so they've
It's all like that. Darn it, I want to get some videos. Somebody signed it.
Just glad I don't have to carry That's kind of crazy.
I'll get him to send me the final one because I had.
Does that get tiring like after a while? Like carrying this? You just hold the microphone. It's like that's heavier than the phone.
yeah, the microphone when you're having part of this, because somebody ever reported that.
You guys Meerkat?
This is why you guys are the